Men like chameleons in the dark. I grew used to seeing Pano only at night because we worked so much, though it felt like months since we had truly seen each other. I worked 2 jobs, he worked 3 jobs, and we often joked between us that we'd be lucky to recognize each other in crowds lately, much less make children, which, in any case, we both originally said we didn't want. Sometimes lately I wondered why we lived together at all. Him with his black, shady wings that stretched between his forearms and his sides, me with my extra eyes on the back of my head, mutants all these days. But we weren't even compatible mutants. He could fly. Granted, his flight efforts were confined to 20 feet airborne, and he more often used a limited version of these for short hops between the coffee machines and the cash registers at his liquor store job. But he should have found another flyer, one of those women he could leap lily pads with or do whatever kinky things those other flyers do. Not that I didn't love his wings or how they wrapped around me. When he fell in love with me, he told me that because his wings were organic, they carried much blood to their ebony folds, a blood that was affected by his thoughts, and these thoughts affected their colors, which had turned to a flushed plum. This was how he was sure, he muttered, so early in our relationship, that I was the one. I had extra sight. He liked how my back eyes could watch him while I cooked from the shaved panel on the back of my head. My back eyes remained open even while I slept. It made him feel safe, he said, to have so much watching going on. My feelings for him softened as his wings changed color to match me. When they did, they felt softer too, which I knew because he let me stroke them with long, lingering caresses, up and down, side to side, over and under. They were his most erogenous zone. "Touch that part near my armpit, babe," he'd say. "That ridge, lightly, lighter now. Yeah, okay. Trace your name on my wing." As I did this, he nearly rolled and twisted in our bed in such a state of ecstasy that I could hardly believe that I'd caused it. But this was long ago. Sometimes, when he wanted to, I let him make up the eyes on the back of my head because a fluttering of those lashes was a tactile sensation, almost like he stroked my brain directly. Turquoise shadow, I'd say, breath-catching. False lashes, big purple liner, now a mirror. He did all I asked and more, but this was before he added that 3rd job, before the night window that brooked no shared daylight. I don't need to tell you how rapidly things deteriorated. We lost that friendly silence. A few weeks ago, as I lolled in bed, I saw him watching me, so asked, "What are you looking at?" "I'm just wondering," he said, "if we had kids, would they have only one extra eye or puny wings that couldn't even fly?" Fuck's sake, what? I was shocked, hurt, twisted the coverlet between my fingers to compress it. "You didn't want kids," I said, eyes all burning. He turned his back to me, opening and shutting his arms, fanning out his wings, not replying. "Did you lie?" I asked. "Fucking flyboy, did you lie?" "Yeah, maybe," he said, "but not on purpose." More weeks went on in this ambiguous way, little by little the exhaustion taking its toll. Finally, in something men might think of as an irrational female gesture, I said, "If you don't want me anymore, Pano, move out." "I don't want to move," he said. I love you." But I had a feeling he might not. So I went to his day jobs one by one, taking a sick day off mine. At the liquor store, I could park backwards and look in, so I did. There they had hired another flyer. Pretty, brunette, petite, with one of those round faces that looked so sweet and well-intentioned. As she flew from station to station, I noticed her wings were black and yellow. I noticed him watching her, though he pretended not to. I wanted to poke out the eyes in the back of my head. He and she tied their aprons the same way. Ties flapping loosely on their asses as they walked. He was very chatty, curious. This curiosity rankled. At his second day job at the laundromat and dry cleaners cashier, he hit up a pert girl with blue gills on her wrists, but I wasn't worried because what would a flyer want with a fish? It's not like he could fly through the water or get freaky with her in the down low, but just once during that shift, I watched him stroke her gills with his thumb and index fingers. She liked this and darted off with a blush. At his third job, at the motor shop, the only woman around was a slider. You know, those ones who roll from here to there. She had long green hair and slid all around the floor like a hot drop of grease, but he didn't seem to notice her much for the first few hours, so this was fine by me, until he stopped her sliding past him with a wide expansion of his open wing, and then, in a slow move like for lovers, brought her in close and whispered in her ear. She laughed. He laughed. They both laughed. Raunchy, disgusting laughers. But I went home quickly so that he wouldn't know that I had been at any of his jobs. I waited for 9 o'clock. When he strode through the door, I laid on the bed, pretending to be sleepy. "I'm home, Fowler," he announced. "That's good," I said. I had to be asleep by 11 to get up for my jobs the next day. He knew this. He went to the kitchen to fix himself some goulash. When he finally came back in, it was 10 till 11. Figured he did this so he wouldn't have to talk to me. I pretended to be asleep. The next day at my jobs, I started scanning the available men, wondering if someone watching me would think I were flirting in how I regarded them. I smiled at them, sure, but I'd always done that. I noticed especially all the cute younger men with multiple eyes. Even pictured having cute little multi-eyed children without deformed wings. And I started to hate Pano's wings. I had awful daydreams of him having flight sex with that other flyer, dreams that made me almost feel furious enough to seduce one of the young multiple-eyed men out of spite alone. But then I remembered I had no real proof. Pano worked 3 jobs. We were tired. And I was older. What would I want one of those young boys for if not an afternoon romp? Also, I loved Pano. He said he loved me. For years, we had loved each other until there was no unloving to be done. For me, his wings had purpled. I wanted him to remember. So the next night I showered and shaved. When he came home, I said, all sultry, "Pano, why don't you come lay with me a while before I sleep? I've missed you." "Oh, okay," he said. "All right." But it was like there was ice between us. He elbowed me in the side. A part of him wanted to be closer to me. I could tell from the way he kept looking at me and shrugging something away, but seeming tender in his regard, too, almost regretful. "Do my eyes, Pano," I said. "The ones in the back of my head." "Okay," he replied. And he did them so pretty, I wondered why he'd never done this bang-up a job before. They were rainbow with blue, yellow, orange, and lime liner. They had faux lashes with rhinestones. When he completed his work, I felt happy. "Pano," I said, "let me rub your wings a bit." "I'm tired," he said. "Later." "Later I'll be sleeping," I insisted. "Tomorrow, maybe?" he replied. "Oh, baby, just open up your wings and let me rub them," I said, furious. But it was pretty clear that he wasn't going to open them, even in the dark. His arms were pressed tightly to his sides and he would not budge. I nursed several escalating fears and then sidled up to him, caressing him, trying in vain to get him to open his arms, and finally, when I yanked hard enough, he did. But they were colored differently, even in the dark, and their textures were bumpy and slick. "Is your blood okay?" I asked, considering disease. "Your wings are different." When I turned on the lights, though he tried to pull them closed, I saw that his wings were stained yellow and blue and green. Blood flow was love, I thought. Plum because he loved me, because the eyes on the back of my head were violet. And the most telling thing about this whole thing was that he'd touch me while his wings held so many of the colors of other women. Dirty fucking butterfly. It's not like I'd agreed to give him a harem. I would not have agreed to that. I wondered how he'd touched them. "Clean my back eyes," I shouted, "now." I felt them blinking as he did this with pleasure-mixed pain, but the eyes in the back of my head had limited tear ducts, just enough wet to keep them lubricated. They could not cry. I let them glare at him a few moments before he got up to leave for his other job. It was only when he did that I turned to lie on my back to block their view of our room. I shut my other eyes, too, the ones in front. These had always been blue, but not azure. not the blue of small gills on wrists fingered by indexes and thumbs. Reflecting on this, I opened just one of my 4 eyes as I watched the ceiling above my bed and thought about who would pack first and what would go where. I wondered which of his other 3 women held the strongest place in his heart, and then it occurred to me this didn't matter. I knew at his early flinch, before he spread his wings, that we had more problems between us than intimacies now. Contact with other people can do that. The ease of new, unblemished relationships, causing all kinds of unspoken, heretofore unfelt resentments. I could kill him for wearing those colors and lying. I rolled to my side again, letting all of my eyes open and peruse our shared room. Pena was gone, working, always working, but I had started to piece it all together now. His every ambiguous act, the reason for his small and recent oddities like skewed return times, longer shifts, talk about our would-be deformed children. So I knew more then, lying there by myself in our bed, than I had known in months, though Peno had long been aware of his own subtle changes. I stayed in the dark pondering this and imagining the slow disappearance of my color from his wings and his subsequent hiding of this as the jaundice, ocean, and salad strains took over. It was no small weight to me then that I should have enjoyed so much sight all my life, yet have been so blind. But no matter how many eyes I had, I could not see a color changing in the dark. Thank you.
Fowler.